Primary Tourist, Chapter 8. You know what really floats my boat? Beginnings. I'm good at them too. In writing, life, romance, or maybe even pre romance. Nothing gives me more pleasure than something well started. Can't wait to see what happens next. Can you beat that? The problem is sometimes it goes so quick. If you blink, you're way past promising beginning to disappointing ending. And who's a better example of that than Herman Cain? I really believe he thought he was going to be president right until the end. The scary thing is he wasn't alone in that for a while. In a funny kind of way, I summed up the Herman Cain demise with three spikes. You might as well listen to them. It'll only take a minute. Cain and 999 discrepancies. It has clarity, yet you don't understand. Cain's New Hampshire dilemma. 9 and 9 are fine, but never 9. Cain's marital communication. Honey, don't worry, no sex, just money. And that was about it for Herman Cain. There was a big announcement on December 3rd, 2011, which C-SPAN covered live, but everybody knew it was over, even Herman Cain, and that's saying something. He tried to say, this is wonderful. Now he's going to build a great web page, but who's he kidding? Oh, he can stage his grand entrance, complete with Happy Bride, all he wants, but doesn't he know he's the transparent man? He's the solution man, yet he can't figure a way out of his mess. He's a man of clarity who talks a lot and says little. He's a meteor that doesn't know his flare time has come and gone. No matter how good the tunes were, no matter how grand the bus, they were the songs in the ride of the end of the movie. Well, his movie. Mitt and the Not Romneys still have lots of miles in their own buses. This was just the beginning. By the time of the Iowa caucus, I already had spent a day in New Hampshire, ready to stay there for the month of January, soaking up the carnival, chasing the great white, and looking for a job. Home base was to be Rod and Erica's house. They didn't have a television, so I hovered over the radio, staring at it, like it would get not only louder, but more full of clairvoyant clarity if I paid close enough attention. As is often the case, the contenders were all winners, if you listen to them. Romney and Santorum were neck and neck all night. Romney declared the winner by 7 votes at night's end, although more votes were found later and Santorum actually won. Either way, they both had a claim. Romney emphasized the fact that he didn't spend much time in Iowa, while Santorum never missed an opportunity to remind people that Romney had a ton more money than him. Ron Paul finished a strong third, only 3 points behind the co-leaders. Gingrich and Huntsman are pointing to other contests, Gingrich hoping he can hold on until South Carolina, Huntsman putting all his chips on New Hampshire. Only Bachmann, with an abysmal 5%, couldn't really put a positive spin on things. She had high expectations once and peaked way too soon. She stepped aside right after the Iowa caucus. One of my last spikes was about Rick Perry. A first time for everything. Rick Perry returns home and thinks. At some point during the day from Texas, he announced he was pointing toward South Carolina, but everybody can tell his run was coming to a close. Like I was saying, I wanted beginnings, but endings were all around me. Cain, Perry, Bachman, whatever. But my Spike-Lee muse was missing before Rick Perry even, as it turned out. Just as I can smell Great White in the vicinity. Sneaky bastard, that dick. Because the carnival is just starting. After Iowa, everybody that wasn't there already heads toward New Hampshire, Great White included. There might not be a president there, but somebody else is catching the story, because this is ground zero for Mitt and the Not Romneys, just for a few days. First stop was to see Romney himself at Central High School on January 4th, the day after Iowa. And he was, as always, swarmy. It was kind of interesting to see him for the first time in 4 years, to see how he smoothed over some of the rough edges. He no longer looked like someone uncomfortable in his own skin. He now looked like someone very comfortable making so much more money than you. It's funny how you can think this is where the action is when you're in the midst of it. Even while you're shaking your head, you think, wow, what do these people see that I don't? I know I'm not his target audience. He's going for vanilla, but it isn't even good vanilla. Did I miss the Kool-Aid? Young people, too. Kids today, they don't even know good vanilla. It sure can be disappointing being in the center of the vortex sometimes. I guess it depends on the vortex. The only sexy thing about this vortex were the Occupy people that somehow managed to get the first couple of questions during the question and answer period. NPR emphasized that, as I recall, the next morning, but in the hall it just seemed like a chance for Romney to scold them for not allowing him to answer the question. John McCain was there, giving Romney an endorsement. Jesus, how times have changed. I can remember McCain in '08 calling out Romney as the candidate for change, but the change seemed to be whichever change the polls called for. Hell, everybody knew that, even McCain. But here he is, 4 years later, pimping himself out for Romney, wishing it could have been him. But the last 4 years, you can tell, have not been kind to John McCain. He actually peaked in 2000, don't you think? Before Bush libeled him in South Carolina, the first of two robberies Bush perpetrated on the public that election. You know, I rarely agree with John McCain, but I was always amazed at his ability to disappoint me. The hell of it is as bad as these two are, they're the cream of the crop. That tells you a little something about the crop, don't you think? If they can't even be not Romney, how could they be not Obama? And me, what am I doing but chasing the great white in the mountains? What kind of habitat is that? I was looking for maybe not giants, but men of some stature, and I end up with Rick Santorum. What the fuck? But first, I had to get to the Grapponi Center in Concord, where Santorum was having an event. I heard the shortcut is through the railroad tracks. Just up ahead was the wrong side of the tracks. It looked like people were living there, with tents pitched as they hovered near a fire, under a bridge up ahead. Between me and them were hesitant do-gooders, as long as they could do good from their minivan. Excuse me? She couldn't have been talking to me, but who else could she have been talking to? Could you do me a favor? The car was running with one woman at the wheel, while another was at the trunk, which was open, some canned goods on the cabin. What could I say? So I said nothing. Mostly, though, I was preoccupied with the folks with the tents, wondering how to avoid them, just in case, as I cut through their territory. Could you do me a favor? Could you tell those people that we have canned goods for them? I'm too afraid to go there, but, well, please? A friend of mine has a little saying he likes to repeat. That's the least I could do. And you know me, I always do the least I can do. That seemed apropos somehow. Sure, I said, hoping I sounded less scared than I was. I mean, there were about 8 of them, most of them guys. I'll do my best. Sometimes a man, to be a mensch, has to do something because, well, it might not be much, but it's right. Even if you don't want to, if you're afraid to, if it makes your heart pound just a little harder. That's kind of how things were as I walked over there, and my footing wasn't too great on the rails. Of course, lots better than these days, but that's a way different story. Hey guys, those women in that minivan have canned goods for you. I talked to the first person I ran into, who was just a little ahead of the crowd. Al, can we use canned goods? Al was the guy manning the fire. He couldn't quite hear me, so he moved closer. Those ladies have canned goods for you. Al just kind of shrugged, a kind of, can we use this? Can I trust them kind of shrug? I just told them I'd tell you. What the hell? Free food, right? And they both started walking toward the van. This, more than all the polls, all the winners and losers, Romneys and not Romneys, is at the heart of the election. How many people live under bridges, be it New Hampshire bridges, Florida bridges, anywhere bridges? And what are we going to do about it? Who are we as a people? And how about the wannabes? Will any of these presidential applicants, hoping for a second interview, take the time to talk to these people, these non registered people? Take the time to look into the eyes of our fears of the future? My guess is Rick Santorum had no idea that people were living on the tracks next to his event. He had no idea that the only things keeping them from freezing to death were fire, a tent, and maybe a blanket. It was more elemental than voting, so it couldn't be counted. Just walking over to the Grapponi Center, I felt the night chill. I mean, it hadn't been so bad, but it's winter in New Hampshire. Walking into the Grapponi Center, that seemed a whole world away. I didn't know it at the time, but I came into the Grapponi Center just in time to avoid a different kind of chill. Unfortunately, it also means I missed the Santorum event. He was posing with visitors from Louisiana who had a tradition of posing with the candidate. If you listened carefully, you got the vibe that the event was maybe good theater, which wasn't a good thing for Rick Santorum. Gosh, Toto, you're not in Kansas anymore. Or should I say Des Moines? Rick Santorum, to say the least, has an issue with same-sex marriage. Which is fine in Iowa. In New Hampshire, not so much. One state's rugged individualist is another state's deer in headlights. According to the Concord Monitor, Santorum equated same-sex marriage with three guys living together, or accused us of equating the two, or something. I can't understand the line of reasoning, but it was some kind of attempt to debunk the right to the pursuit of happiness argument. The weird thing was I kind of felt for the guy, as you feel for any fish out of water. But his shit was not flying with this college crowd, to say the very least. I don't think anybody threw any garbage, but it sort of had that feel to it. Couldn't tell that from the way he posed for pictures, though. Folks from Louisiana must seem like central Pennsylvania natives right about now. There was a conference going on with workshops set up by one of the local colleges. I went to one workshop for anybody that wanted to make a point of their own when asking a wannabe a question at a town hall. It was kind of designed to get folks on TV, it seems to me, but I don't remember. What I remember is that there were two women, and I was kind of checking out the younger one, but the older one seemed to be checking me out, especially after I asked the question that marked me as a blue state kind of guy, because she was definitely a blue state kind of gal. I remember she was dark, exotic looking, and she was part of the Louisiana contingent. After the workshop, I went to the auditorium across the hall. She was there, and we caught each other's eye again. I could have gone over and talked to her, used some kind of pretense, maybe could have, well, who knows. Maybe it's because I was more concerned about elemental things, as if seeing homeless folks forced me to look beyond the superficial to basic questions of survival. I called a cab, thinking of shelter. Now I regret it because I probably won't be upright enough to do that again, right, sir? What's that? Never say never? You know, I guess you're right. Thank you. That's reassuring. Really. Vermin Supreme, you know, the guy with the boot on his head, was supposed to be at the Grapponi Center, but he wasn't there. Instead, there was a whole array of wannabes you never heard of, but that ain't the point. The media will tell you that it was all about how many votes you get, but it's the whole thing. It's the voicing of opinion. These little tiny voices. It's that, not the carnival. That's what New Hampshire is all about. But Vermin, what he did was brilliant. I mean, his campaign promises were for mandatory toothbrushing and a free pony for everyone. How serious can he be? Carnival. Pure carnival. But his point is, a promise is a promise. It's all just empty words. You can't be more serious than that. But he wasn't there. My cab came. Time to go home. There's nothing more to say. Primary Tourist, Chapter 9. On the road again. Ain't it great to be on the road again? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, singing music to my friend. Oh, ain't it great to be on the road again? Oh, sorry for singing right at the beginning of the session, but you ever have a song stuck in your head? I guess who I should apologize to is Willie Nelson. I don't know what came over me. I think it's because I'd rather be on the road again. Better than here, that's for sure. That's what it was all about in '04. Ever since that first trip with Steve, I took a day trip here, a day trip there, solitary trips every time. And nights I'd usually spend with my friend Abby. That was kind of like a bromance, except one of the bros was really a sis. That ended at the intersection of neglect and bad blood, and I'm not exactly sure why, though I'm sure I could think of a reason or two if I put my mind to it. Pity, too, because she was a step above a political tourist. Real knowledgeable, leans to the left, but so did I. It was a little threatening, though, I'll tell you, because she was way past me and I guess what you would call preparedness. We'd put it on C-SPAN, see if I got on TV, and she'd tell me what she learned watching MSNBC or CNN. Maybe if we wanted to be flabbergasted at what passes for facts, we'd check out Fox. Fair and balanced. Yeah, right. And I'd tell her about my day on the road, and we'd hang out on her bed in that bromance kind of way until her husband got home from work. He was a great guy, great chef, too. And we'd chat a little bit, then I had to surrender his bed. I had to get up early the next day anyway. I had to be north of Boston before typical Boston rush hour clusterfuck sets in, up towards where stakes are as high as the mountains, New Hampshire. Then, and only then, would I reward myself with a bowl. Ah, Jesus, I didn't know how good I had it. Ain't that always the way? I don't remember how I knew he was going to be there, but I was heading to a diner in New Hampshire where John Edwards was going to be. I don't even remember what town it was in, but I knew enough to know I was in. Breakfast and politics, what beats that? Well, a sighting of a great white, but that's too much to ask. It was a bright and cheery restaurant, and it seems to me the French toast was pretty awesome. After I was finished eating, me and everyone else was waiting for John Edwards. The crowd was mostly citizens impressed with his showing in Iowa, with a lot of Edwards staff there. My waitress couldn't wait for the whole thing, primary included, to be over. Isn't it good for business, though? I asked. A little, but we have good regulars, too. Sometimes somebody I see every day will not get a seat because of all the out-of-staters. That's just not right. I didn't know what to expect at that time. I was open-minded about John Edwards back then, but didn't expect much. Abby's brother was good friends with Elizabeth, so Abby wanted to love him. But it was tough to even like him. Even though, push comes to shove, I agreed with him on almost all the issues. There was something not genuine about him. I don't remember much about what he said. I just remember he wasn't very inspiring, almost like he hadn't woken up yet. And I remember one question at the end about legalizing marijuana, and he fell back on the "I have to study it" line, effortlessly, like he was a natural politician. And if that's what it takes to beat Bush, what is it that we would win anyway? But all we could do was stop the bleeding, which isn't nothing, I guess. What I remember more was the big-ass bus that was going to take him away into the sunset. Well, it was still morning, but you know what I mean. I had never seen a big-ass campaign bus before. Another first. That's what was so special about '04. It was a world of firsts, a new one every minute it seemed sometimes. But new or not, I knew I hadn't met a president. I knew that the beautiful photo op, the candidates splashed in sun, waving through the bus window, that the iconic image, if you squint, you can even see a Kennedy where there's really only an Edwards, only went so far. But hell, not a bad way to spend a Monday, I must say. On the way out the door, a college kid handed me a flyer, and little did I know what that would end up meaning. The flyer was for the Howard Dean event where I rubbed shoulders with Al Franken, Martin Sheen, Peter Jennings. If that kid wasn't outside that restaurant, I wouldn't have been at the event. Kind of has a "It's a Wonderful Life" feel, doesn't it? So it was time to hit the road again. And that was another special part of New Hampshire in '04. That's the only year I had the luxury of a car. The road was usually pretty with politics on the radio. And this time, Howard Dean would be on the other end. And he was kind of my guy, and I hadn't seen him yet. This was the first time in Manchester since that time with Steve. And I got there in time for a bowl before the thing. And I know I already told you about the whole Al Franken tackle, so I won't go into any of that again, except to say I was still stoked, still wanted more. I knew there were some Kerry events, and I hadn't seen him yet, and there was a good chance he was going to win the nomination. But I was a tourist, not really a journalist, let's face it. And now I could look back at it and see that Kerry's band of brothers coming into Iowa was basically their day in the sun. And the story of the cycle was how they gave their brother Iowa and the Bounce gave him New Hampshire and ultimately the nomination. But I was afraid to get shot out of those events, especially those with Ted Kennedy. Hey, that was my last chance to see Ted Kennedy, as it turns out. Maybe any Kennedy. I mean, who's left? Oh, yeah, Patrick. I've seen him, but I'm kind of not sure he counts. The time I saw Patrick was kind of weird, too. He gave his base plenty of red meat by bashing Bush, then somebody else spoke, then he'd say, "Oh, and another thing," took the mic back and then bashed Bush some more. Really, though, wasn't that fish in a barrel? Being anti-Bush was kind of like being pro-goodness and niceness, according to that big chunk of the voting public that Dean claimed he spoke for, the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. Anyway, that day, I decided to stick with my latest crush, Howard Dean. He was heading to UNH, and goddamn it, so was I. That was Howard Dean's wheelhouse, Birkenstock Central. What Dean's doing now is motivating his worker bees because tomorrow is another busy day. The Deaniacs were motivated and visible. You got to give him that. In Iowa, it kind of backfired. People got sick of Birkenstocks and Volvos, which was ironic because my new old car was a Volvo, and I was happier with it than I've ever been with a car. They probably would have thought I was just another Deaniac. Maybe they'd be right. I had never been to UNH, and I had a chance to check out the campus. I actually think I got shot out of the main speech because, let's face it, I wasn't the only guy to fall in love with Howard Dean, especially on a college campus in New Hampshire. Only some of us could tell it was a doomed love affair. Well, what did victory have to do with love? As so often is the case, this stop didn't live up to the anticipation, mostly because I had unrealistic expectations after the afternoon's festivities. But all in all, damn, what a day. And it wasn't quite over. There was still the ride home with politics on the radio most of the way back. I went to Abby's again to fill her in on my day and to hear what she learned from MSNBC, CNN, and the New York Times the day before the primary. Then we'd look past that, past the convention, to the general election. Both of us wanted Bush out from the core of our being. But who are we going to nominate? Abby always said we when she referred to the Democratic Party. She identified herself as a Democrat. In fact, had done a lot of volunteer work for the party at different times throughout her life. Her dad and brother were big Democrats down south, and she was as knowledgeable as either of them. I thought of myself as an independent, even though the idea of voting Republican I found either frightening or hilarious. Both. Ha ha ha. Definitely both. Sorry, didn't mean to laugh in your face. Ha ha ha. Sorry. But on general principle, I'm not a party line kind of guy. Any party. Any line. And I guess maybe I'd taken a couple of good-sized chugs of the Howard Dean Kool-Aid. Why not Howard Dean? Implicit was the big question. If not him, who else? Any one of them didn't sound as good as not Bush. As long as you can just be not him, you don't have to be anyone in particular. I agree with almost everything he says, but can you really see him winning? Who can you see winning? And that was always the stumper. If only we could actually vote not Bush. Actual Bush didn't stand a chance. But remember, too, he just had to get close enough to steal it. Anyway, we know how that ended up. But first the carnival came to town, as it always did, and I had a roadworthy car, which I rarely did. Like when the carnival next came to town between Christmas of '07 and New Year's of '08. Bonanza was doing the driving by that time. I had mentioned to Rod that I might use his house as headquarters. I knew where the spare key was. Figure I'll come up while you're up north. That's how we left it. At least that's how I remember it. Rod's memory doesn't completely jive with mine. Any way you look at it, my headquarters was only maybe 7 blocks from the State House. Somebody was bound to use that, at least for an iconic image the State House always delivers. So what I do is get up early, walk to get a cup of coffee in the Concord Monitor, drink my cup of coffee, then walk over to In a Pinch to read the Monitor to help me figure out my day over the Monitor, a cup of coffee and some kind of muffin. As I was paying for my coffee, I asked one of the kids behind the counter how far Bow was. Is it a far walk? Oh, yeah, about 7 miles. Oh, shit. Who's there? I guess I was kind of known as a political tourist. Bill Clinton. No big loss. I've seen him a lot. That's New Hampshire for you. It's the only place where meeting an ex-president could be ho-hum. With Bill, though, there were reasons not to like him, especially if you were big on Obama. There were signs that he'd be a better president than for a spouse. In fact, Bill seemed to be hurting Hillary. He who lives by Bill will die by Bill. Do you think I could hitchhike there? I must have seemed like such an old hippie. Not a lot of traffic goes up that way. How about buses? I'm not really sure, but I don't think so. He asked one of the attractive women behind the counter. Hey, any buses go out to Bow? Not really. The conversation went on, but it was mostly flirting between the two of them. It was kind of fun to watch, but I was still left with the sinking reality setting in that I wasn't going to see Bill Clinton today. Back to the drawing board. Tell you the truth, I don't remember much about the whole week, except that all the wannabes seemed to be congregating in Iowa, which was coming up real quick. So what else could I do but collect my own collection of Concord monitors, read about campaigns that for now were congregating in the heartlands? As the year was slipping away, I found myself increasingly wondering, what am I doing here? I think I meant New Hampshire, not Earth. I couldn't sleep at night because the dog in the apartment alongside me was very loud. I met the owner on the way to get the Concord Monitor. She wondered who I was. I explained I was a friend of Rod's from the days before dirt, and I was kind of looking after things while they were skiing. Then I took the walk to get the Monitor, looking to see if Moby Dick was anywhere nearby. I did hear about some gay civil union ceremonies being performed on the State House lawn at midnight, corresponding with the new law going into effect on January 1st. I figured maybe I'll walk on down to the State House. Might as well. I'll be alone at New Year's anyway. Then, at about 11:30, I saw the headlights. Cool. Rod and Erica were back. What the hell are you doing here? I told you, it was just theoretical. You mean like it was a theory there would be a period of time between Christmas and New Year's? What did you tell Joyce? Good old Erica. She knew how to cut to the chase. Joyce is the one with the cigarettes and the barking dog? Right. I was looking after things and you were skiing. Perfect. I thought so. I'm glad you're back. I'll be with family for New Year's. And I knew, deep down, that the civil unions would have to go on without me. Family before everything else, even great white sightings. Even though there were no real wannabe sightings, just being with loved ones for New Year's made it worth the trip. And the next day, New Year's Day, was a day when magic was in the air. Snow. Incredible, isn't it? I mean, we all know it'll be a real pain in the ass later, but isn't there something special about it as it falls from the sky? It was just starting when Erica and I decided to take a ride, which meant have a smoke from Erica's cigarette. We had to be so discreet. As the buzz transcended over us, we were driving to new territory. I mean, new to me. And the sky was becoming more and more white. They say every snowflake is unique. If that's true, how about every snowstorm, every blizzard slightly different, each flake a beautiful woman you see but once? Isn't that something, a little slice of wonder you can't take with you? It seemed like a good omen for '08, but it was early yet. Whiteness was slowly enveloping the earth. What's that? Running late? Yeah, time sure did fly today for me, too. But there it is, gone.